If you're always studying but feel like you're not making real progress, you don't need to try harder or do more. You just need better systems. Over the past few years, I've learned Spanish and Japanese to fluency and reached conversational Italian in just 30 days. And that wasn't from having some secret polyglot talent or by studying 10 hours a day, but just from following a few simple and repeatable systems. So today, I want to share with you the number one system responsible for most of my results, and how you can start using it yourself to do the same thing. Now, before we get into the system, we first need to understand a big trap that most language learners will fall into, and specifically how I designed the system to avoid it. That trap is the idea of trying to learn everything. Now, although that on the surface might sound like a good idea, it slows down your progress a lot, and here's specifically why it's so harmful. So imagine for a second you're at a party and there's like 5 groups talking. Group 1 might be talking about cars, Group 2 about food, Group 3 about gaming, and so on. Now, each group will have their own unique lingo and unique words, and so if you stay with the gaming group for a while, then you'll pretty quickly pick up their terminology. But if you try to go between all of them, well, then there's a lot of information for you to take in, and by the time you come back to the first group, you'll pretty much have forgotten what they even talked about in the first place. And that's the big trap that a lot of language learners fall into. Jumping from topic to topic, trying to learn like 1,000 words at once with different apps and different resources might sound good, but it will have you not learn anything and instead just kind of sucking at everything. Because to learn, you need repetition. But here's how we can turn that around and actually use it to our advantage instead. I call this system the narrow input flywheel. And here's how it works. So you start off by picking one topic you like. It can be literally anything from sports to video games to food. And then you only listen to and read content from that one topic for a few weeks to a few months. It can be watching YouTube videos, listening to podcasts, or reading a short text. And whenever you see a word that seems pretty useful that you don't know, you pause, you write it down, then you go back to watching. And here's where this system is so powerful. When you watch content in a language, you get what experts call comprehensible input. By doing that and seeing real language, you learn how the language is actually used. Everything from the grammar, pronunciation, to common words, all subconsciously. But here's the thing, even the people who hear about input and use it as a part of their routine still fall into a very common trap. They just put on a movie and kind of hope for the best. But that rarely works, because you're spreading yourself too thin across too many topics and not getting the right repetition. And so when you narrow it down to just one topic at a time, even though that might sound extreme, 2 very good things happen. First, you'll actually get the repetition necessary to learn. And second, the things you're learning are actually useful, instead of just a bunch of random body parts or weird animal names. And when you're also writing down words and reviewing them later, now you're speeding this whole thing up a lot. And you've got a system that's going to get you really good at what's important quickly. So let me show you the power of the system in action and explain to you how I used it to learn Japanese. When I started learning, I had one simple goal: to speak it on my trip to Japan in about a year and a half. And like most people, I just kind of started learning. I watched a video about body parts, one about the weather, one about some animals. And while I did pick up a thing or two, I'm not gonna lie, it was pretty damn slow at first. So instead of trying to learn Japanese all at once, I asked myself, what do I actually want from the language? And I came to the conclusion that there were 3 main things. 1, I wanted to be able to talk about and understand basic Japanese, just to have normal conversations. 2, I wanted to understand basic food words and kind of read menus and stuff at restaurants. And 3, I wanted to be able to talk about clothes and fashion because I plan to do quite a lot of shopping there. And so here's how I did it. For the first year and a half, I literally only watched stuff on these 3 topics. First, on food and cooking content. Now this was a pretty good start actually, because it was quite visual with them showing the ingredients and process and all that, so it was easier to understand. And then I kind of moved on to some more fashion, lifestyle kind of content. A lot about clothes specifically, which is also quite easy because they're showing stuff. And then I went on to more so reality, kind of everyday things. And so I started watching some easier reality shows. And I'm not gonna lie, at first, every topic felt really hard, but you gotta kind of expect that. And then after sticking to it for a while, you're gonna notice that you get really good really quickly. And so the cool thing here was that despite being in my first year of learning and not being at an advanced level, I was still able to enjoy and watch and learn from pretty advanced native content that I found interesting and that were, things about my biggest hobbies. And the result became that I mastered all the basic language because each topic shares very similar words like this, that, good, bad, etc. And I also got really good at the topics that I cared about. But now let me explain to you the part of this system that makes it so powerful and that's a little unique. Here's where the flywheel effect comes in. And for those of you who don't know, a flywheel is basically this really cool machine that stores kinetic energy. And so when you start pushing it, you gotta push it really hard to get it to start going. But once it started going a little bit, you gotta push it a little bit less, and a little bit less, and a little bit less. And as it starts going like this, the momentum is eventually gonna take over and it's gonna get easier and easier with time. And so it basically starts to multiply your efforts. And after a while, it's almost automatic. And that's exactly how this system works. So you might be watching a gaming video and you see the word for noob 3 times. So you think, okay, this is probably pretty important. Then you pause, you write it down, and you add it to your Anki deck. Next day, you review it. It takes maybe 10 seconds, and now it's actually in your memory. And so now the next time you see it, you can understand it even more, because you've already reviewed it a few times. And when you understand it even more, what happens? Well, that means that there's one less unknown word in this topic. And so the whole topic and essentially language gets easier for you because you know another word. And when the language gets easier for you, well, now you're gonna learn even more because there's less unknown words and the whole thing just gets both easier and more fun. So when you learn more words, you add them to Anki, then you see them in the video again and they start clicking and it becomes even more understandable. And this kind of cycle and this loop just keeps going and getting easier and easier. And eventually, you've understood the whole topic. So then you move on to another topic and you keep doing this for all the topics until you've essentially mastered everything that you care about learning. So seeing how your inputs and topics and study work together like this as a system lets you use them in ways that benefit each other. And you're going to be learning a lot quicker thanks to it. So step 1, if you haven't already, I'd recommend you to lay the groundwork. That is to say, learn some basic grammar and some basic vocabulary, whether it be from a textbook or an app or whatever. That's because it's going to be pretty damn hard to watch a video of some sort, even if it's not a native video, and understand a lot of it if you haven't studied anything. So starting off to do that is a good idea, to give you kind of a head start. Then you choose your first topic. Just pick anything that you like, that you think that in the future you're probably going to want to be able to talk about. And there's one thing that you need to keep in mind here, which is the difficulty level. So if it's too hard and you understand, say, less than half of what's being said, then you probably want to pick some beginner content to get started with. There's plenty of beginner channels out there. Just look for Spanish beginner content or Japanese beginner content and you'll probably find something. And then there, you can pick videos with a similar topic to get started because they tend to have quite a lot of variety. Ideally, it's something that's pretty visual, but it's not mandatory. Step 3 is to build the vocabulary loop by adding, say, 5 to 20 new words a day to whatever vocabulary system of your choice. I like to use a flashcard app called Anki, but you can use whatever you want to and just write it down on a piece of paper if you want to. And step 4 is to just sit back, relax, and enjoy your comprehension improving and compounding over time, starting to master one topic and getting really, really good at it. And then once you've gotten really good at it, step 5 will be to choose another topic that you also think is important. And then you move on to another topic, and you stick with them for roughly a few weeks to a few months, even longer if you want to. And what I like to do is to stick to one for, say, a few weeks. And then once I start getting a little bit bored, it's totally okay to switch and then come back to the other one later. The whole thing here is just that you don't want to be sticking to, or that you don't want to be doing too many topics at once. But it's totally fine if you do one, then jump to one, then go back, and so on. And then congrats, you're pretty much going to be fluent once you mastered all the most important topics for you and kind of the general language as a whole. If you follow this process and you also add in some speaking practice, you're gonna get fluent quicker than you ever thought was possible. But if you want to take your language learning to the next level and get my full guide to language learning, including all my most important systems, then you can click on the video on screen right here. I'll see you there. Thank you for watching, and until next time, keep learning.